Welcome to KRA's The Hub, the official podcast of KRA Corporation. And now get ready to hear workforce topics and trends you need to know on the go.
Well, welcome back to KRA's The Hub podcast. I'm excited for today because really today's episode is a part of a series that we recently recorded at the 2024 NAHDAP Youth Symposium. It was actually the 25th Youth Symposium put on by NAHDAP. And I just want to start off today's episode by thanking the NAHDAP staff for putting on another great event. This year's symposium brought a gathering, a collection of individuals in workforce development from around the country. And I think this year was one of the largest attended symposiums throughout the 25-year period. So it was a great event full of energy, a lot of great ideas that were shared both in the general sessions as well as many of the workshops. And as we've been able to do here at KRA over the last year is not only have conversations with influencers within workforce development leaders, but also attend some of the larger national conferences and also have conversations with folks there. And at this conference, I had an opportunity to sit down with several wonderful guests. Some of them were presenters at the conference. Others were leaders in workforce and also some exhibitors that were there displaying some really great technology. And so as you sit back and listen to these episodes in this series, I hope that you would glean from the energy, the ideas, the best practices that were shared at this conference. And as always, our goal is to make it relevant. And really this conference, again, was focused on youth services. So many of our conversations were focused on youth services and workforce development, strategies, technologies that are being employed currently, but also what's to come. As things are ever evolving within workforce development, the industry that we're in, how do we stay at the forefront of that? So again, I want to thank you for joining us here on KRA's The Hub, our podcast, and enjoy the episodes that we have here from our recent participation at the NAHDAP Youth Symposium in Phoenix, Arizona.
All right, this is Jonathan Overall back here again with KRA's The Hub podcast, and I'm actually on location in Phoenix, Arizona at the 2024 NAHDAP Youth Symposium, and this has been a full event so far. It's day number 2, and I've had a chance to catch up with a lot of colleagues and former people that I've worked with in the workforce industry, and a lot of great guests that have presented at workshops, also exhibited, companies that offer great resources within the workforce space. And I'm joined now by a special guest, Darrell Andrews, also goes by Coach D. Welcome, Darrell.
It's an honor to be here, man. Thank you for having me on your podcast. And I'm a big fan of KRA. I've been knowing about you guys for quite a few years. So
awesome.
Kudos to the great work you're doing all over the country.
Thank you. Well, we're glad to have you. There's a few things I want to talk about today. I know you presented on a workshop.
Yep.
Want to dive into that topic in today's conversation. But I know you are the consultant and the owner of your organization. You also go by CPO, Chief Passion Officer. Yeah, I know you're passionate about the work that you do and as an advocate, but also somebody that gets in and does the work and really provides impact in this space of workforce development. But I want to, where did the name Coach D come from?
Well, I'm a former athlete and played college football, had a pretty good career there, and then got recruited by a few pro teams. And I just realized that in all my years of being involved with sports, be it as a high school student, college, coaches do one of two things. They motivate and inspire you. You know what I mean? And so they give you, the drive and determination to get out there and give it your best all the time. But a coach does another thing too, and he gives you strategy. They'll give you strategy. So that's really the perfect formula when you think about trying to achieve something. It's great to be motivated, but you also need strategy. So I said, I'm going to be Coach D because that's what I do. I provide both.
That's great. So how did you translate that into the work that you're doing right now? And give our audience some insights as to what you do and how you work with organizations and people.
Well, I started in workforce development many years ago. I was actually a WIA contractor in the states of Delaware and Pennsylvania. And that was kind of coming after having a great corporate career. I worked for a Fortune 50 company, Abbott Medical Diagnostics. It was a great job, but my heart and soul was in workforce development because I'm a byproduct of it. My mother was impacted by workforce development in a very positive way, and I never forgot that. So when I decided, what do I want to do with my life and my time, this was just a nice landing spot for me because of the impact. But the strategy, I realized that, when we work today, now we consult and train and work with workforce groups and education groups and even some corporations all over the country. We go in and what we're trying to do is really positively impact the culture of those organizations. I've presented to probably close to 2,000 workforce development sites throughout this country. And not just as a speaker, but as a consultant and as a coach. So you can clump all those in there, myself and some of my teammates as well. And my thing is I always tell them that to the extent that your culture goes, that's how you go. If you don't have the right culture, if you don't put the team together in the right way, if you're not working together in unison, if you're not rallying around core values and vision and mission, then we're all kind of like independent folks doing our own thing in the same organization. So we bring motivation and strategy to help build teams, to help infuse what we call post-pandemic leadership, to help leaders understand that the people that they're leading today are not the same people that they led 5 years ago. But that sounds good, but you got to put work in to make it happen and achieve the outcomes that you're looking for as leadership, because leadership today is different. We go in and we work with case managers. We work with career coaches around building infrastructures and systems to engage a post-pandemic population. And then we do some work with the clients themselves. But everything we do, and it's interesting because most people know for the motivation piece. Matter of fact, when I come to this conference, they walk past my booth and all they say is, bring it, coach, And I'll tell them, I said, well, I'm going to bring it, but I want you to get it. You know what I mean? And so bringing it is motivating you, but getting it is how you're going to take this information back and do something with it. So I have a saying that I use quite a bit, and that is motivation without information is simply good conversation. So that's how we kind of weave it in. We don't just come in and do a bunch of motivational speeches. We come in and we get into the nuts and bolts of how organizations operate and put systems in place so that they can build the kind of synergy that they want for their organization to succeed. And that's deeply needed in workforce development because we don't do a lot of professional development here in this space, and we need to.
That's great. Yeah, I know you're fresh off of presenting a workshop today, and the title was The Technology Generation and Mental Health Wellness. I know that can go in a lot of different directions, but you mentioned some things here. COVID, the pandemic, it's impacted the workforce, the economy, life as we know it. But also part of that, the generation that's grown up through that, the generation of young people that are being serviced in workforce services today that are part of, I guess, generation Gen Z. And everybody's talking about the Gen Z population. But they're growing up with technology. And so the way they engage with services is much different than a generation ago, even 5 years ago. And you also talked about mental health wellness. So talk about that title and kind of give us some insights as to some of the keys that you presented on today that really hone in on that topic about you.
Yeah, I started by telling, first of all, this is a serious subject. We're here at a workforce development conference, but the ramifications of what's taking place today it's a ripple effect globally. Our young people are dealing with some things mentally that didn't even exist when I was a kid. We didn't have anxiety at the levels that they have anxiety. We didn't deal with depression at the levels in which you're dealing with depression. But all the research is pointing to the fact of a lot of that has to do with social media and video game addiction, where the actual products themselves have become like drugs to our young people. And an example of that is, I will tell any parent that has a child that does a lot of social media or a lot of video games, tell them to put it down for a day. And what you'll see is a response. Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes it's frustration. Sometimes it's a variety of different things. And the reason why, and they don't know this themselves because to them, it's just a game, is because now that thing has kind of penetrated their soul where it's no longer a fun thing to do. I have to do it. So that presents a different kind of a workforce. You're a young person walking in your door. Attention spans may be a little shorter. You gotta, I always say one of the things I talk about today is you gotta use ORs a little bit more, the open-ended questions, the affirmations, reflective listening. Listen to them more, give them a chance to talk because they kind of operate a lot in isolation. So for many of them, just having basic conversations is not easy. So we gotta kind of help them do this. So it's a lot that's going on. The U.S. Surgeon General just released a report that social media addiction is the equivalent of cigarette smoking addiction.
Wow.
And they've labeled it. It's an actual label now. So the government had to jump in. And so what I'm saying is that, we as professionals have to understand, like I said a little earlier, that the pandemic did a doozy. It really did a job on us, man. And our young people were impacted a lot because guess what? They had nothing to do but sit in the house on social media. They couldn't go play with their friends. They weren't involved in sports. And so now 1.5 to 2 years of doing that, well, of course we're dealing with this at this level. But, just like anything else, man, things happen, but with good people, they can change. And that's my hope is that through our organizations and out here in workforce and education systems and parents, we can help point our kids down a different pathway than spending 8-9 hours a day, on some type of social media platform.
That's good. And how are you seeing that translated in the space as you work with clients, as you're working with perhaps providers or individuals working on the front lines? How are you seeing the impact of this message being received and even translated into the services that are being provided to you?
Well, I'll tell you this, for most of them who hear this kind of message, and we have multiple messages in that space, but it's a breath of fresh air for them because they're thinking it. Like, they know that this is happening, but a lot of times they don't know how to articulate it, nor do they want to, because sometimes it can be perceived as an excuse. Okay, I'm not engaging with this young person or these young people because of X, Y, Z. But the reality is I can advocate for them and say, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not as easy. It's not as ever been easy, but it's not as easy as it was before. I mean, we're dealing with a population that's dealt with a lot. So my engagement has to change. The way I interact has to change. And that's from person to person. I got to customize the needs. I need to know a little bit about trauma-informed care because that's a huge thing now because, again, they dealt with a lot of trauma. So the people in the workspaces appreciate the candor. They appreciate the insights, but they also appreciate the tools and the help to be able to work with them in a different way, because that's what we do a lot of. Like with our case managers and career coaches, our process is 8 months, sometimes to a year, working with them every month, building teams and team synergy and camaraderie around engaging this population. So now that case manager is not alone on an island by themselves, they got a team right there at their organization working with them. They need that nowadays. And I tell leaders all over the country, we can no longer afford to hire somebody and just say, go to work. You got to give them the tools, man. And so we're just one of the many resources out here that's a tool that can help them maneuver. But it's not easy, man. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not saying that you wave a wand and everything changes, but with a well-orchestrated plan of action, many of the workforce organizations can do quite well, but they have to stay the course. They can't, do an individual training and go win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's like a team practicing once and say, okay, we got the Super Bowl. No, you got to keep working at it.
That's good. Now, I was in a workshop yesterday and they were talking about youth services and they asked the audience, what are some of the most important components of a youth program? People said placement, incentives, engagement, outreach. And, I think obviously it starts at the beginning, but we've got to keep people engaged throughout the program. We want to see them complete. What are you seeing as some of the ingredients of success to a youth program that is doing it all? That's comprehensively, they're knocking it out of the park. What are some of those ingredients for success that you've seen?
That's a very good question, man. We ran a program years ago by the name of Hype, which is an acronym for Helping Youth Pursue Excellence. It was one of the top workforce programs in the United States under WIA. And I felt uncomfortable sharing this number because it's so high, people think I'm lying, but we had a 90% high school graduation rate.
Wow.
With the hardest to serve students. And I tell people, really, the thing that helped us, my staff, I had about 20 staff members at the time. I said that helped us is we operated on a couple of core philosophies. See, I got a corporate background, so I understand vision, I understand mission, because in corporate America, we're driven by it. You know what I mean? So I said, I got to find a way to parlay this over to workforce development. But our two core philosophies were simply this. One, kids are not committed to programs because they're committed to people. I told my team, the company name, the funding source means nothing. They want you to engage with them. You're the person. You're the one. And if you can build that relationship, you got them. They're going to work with you. They're going to learn. They're going to grow. They're going to do apprenticeships. They're going to do because they now trust you. So it's not the program. That's the source. It's us. It's in the trenches. And the second core philosophy we had, and I love this one, is a student with a dream is a student with a future. And I said, a lot of our young people out here just aren't dreaming, man. They don't see the bigger picture because they may not have been exposed to it besides something they see on TV. That's why so many want to be rappers and so many want to be entertainers. That's what they see.
Yeah.
But they don't know many of us are living really good lives with good careers. We don't all have to be famous and things like that and live a good life. I come from the projects of Syracuse, New York, and my kids did not grow up in the projects. They're beautiful home and beautiful community and things like that. So, but our kids aren't exposed to that. So help them pursue those dreams by helping them create a plan. We used to create what's called dream teams, and the kids will actually work together. So when you ask me, what do I see today? Those components are in place at these organizations. They're operating off of core values. They're operating with intentionality. And I have a saying that I use quite a bit, and that is either you're going to operate with intentionality or you're going to operate with chaos. You make the choice. It's one or the other. And so when you're intentional, you got plans in place. You're being trained on motivational interviewing and coaching. You're putting systems in place. You're holding yourself accountable. You're having team meetings. You're doing Monday morning huddles. You're not only getting community partners, but you're educating your community partners. Every community partner we had within our organization was educated. We want them to understand how we operated and the reason why we were successful and the role that they played in it. Like, for instance, with parents, it's funny. We have parents come to our program and we laid it out for them. We basically said, listen, we're going to do everything for your child. We will work on weekends if we have to sometime, but we need your support. And if something goes wrong, well, we have to deal with your child. If something happens, let's say in the workplace, you can't come running in here with an attitude with us because we may have to pull your child off a job assignment. They know the rules. They know how we operate. So we had to establish that relationship with them and give them the standards. Because if not, you just bring kids into the program and whatever happens. So these strategic type things that are in place, once they're in place, man, you can run a really well-oiled operation with great success. That's how we were able to do it. But left up to itself, all you're going to get is chaos. And I think too many organizations today is like, hire folks, okay, go get them. That's not how it works in this industry.
Yeah, I love that intentionality, knowing the population, who you're working with. And as we're talking about here, what are the factors that are shaping how they see the world, how they interact with the world? And so I think that those are some really key things that you've talked about and were part of your discussion.
Add one more thing too. I love my children. I got 4 kids, beautiful kids. I jokingly say, I just said on stage for them, but they look just like their daddy. That's a whole nother story. But, my kids have helped educate me on things. Because my kids, I have older kids and I have younger kids. The younger ones are dealing more with the times than the older ones did. And they'll tell me, like my son told me, he said, Dad, I know it seems strange, some of the stuff that we struggle with and things like that. But he said, Dad, that's just the world we live in. We didn't grow up in your world. And that helps me, man, because I think sometimes, especially if you're older, let's say if you're whatever category you're in and you're older than this generation, don't measure them by your generation. They're not your generation. You did not have to deal with the things that you didn't have all these social media sites. You didn't have exposure to all these things. And so the worst thing you can do is start saying, well, we did it this way. You will lose them in a heartbeat because they're going to immediately say, you don't understand me. And so meet them where they are. And I told my son, I said, thank you for that. Because because every now and then I had that dad moment, all right, boy, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps. Yeah. It's a dad thing. And he said, well, I didn't have to, Dad. I had a 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath home. I didn't have to do that. So I'm still learning something. And that was an eye opener for me, man. And I think it should be an eye opener for those out there working with this generation of young people.
That's good. Yeah. Now you've been here day and a half, probably a little bit before that, but you've been on the floor talking to a lot of people. You presented today. I'm sure people had questions. And I've been asking this question to folks as I've been interviewing and having conversations about the theme. What are you hearing out there? And I know that people come with challenges. Some of them may be unique to the region that they're in, but a lot of them are universal in different markets geographically throughout our nation. What would you say would be one or two themes that you've been hearing or that's been a trend at this conference so far this year? People in conversation, needs, what they're looking for. Yeah. What would you describe as maybe a common theme at this year's conference?
It's really interesting. I've presented at about 15, 16 conferences this year. And I'm here now. But the thing that I'm finding in particular with workforce development, there's two core areas. A lot of people have been saying probably more than ever, and I don't know if it's just because of the sense of urgency or the need, that people are getting hired and they're just not getting the tools that they need to do the job. There's just like, if I hire you to be whatever, case manager, I'm hiring you, but I'm not equipping you. And it's almost like you have to just watch and learn and grow by being around other people. A lot of folks have been talking about that. There's things I don't know. There's things I need to learn. So I'm not faulting organizations because I know sometimes it's just difficult, especially if you're in a rural area to find help, and people need to get folks into their job assignments. But a lot of folks are saying, I just don't feel like I'm as equipped as I should be because, again, we're dealing with a post-pandemic population. And then another issue that we're dealing with, and this is with leaders, is just recruitment and retention, which I think kind of feeds into some of this other stuff. But what we've been sharing with leaders, I'm about to finish a book. I just finished the self-care movement, which is because I think self-care plays a big role in all this. But another book I'm about to finish is called Post-Pandemic Leadership, The Key to Effective Recruitment and Retention. And what I'm telling leaders is that, the people goes back to the clients. The people you're leading today, it's a common theme, man, are just not the same people you led 5 years ago. So you have to upskill. In workforce development, a lot of people get promoted, but never been taught to lead. You can't just promote a person without giving those leadership skills. So I'm telling you, lead, and then I give them, we coach on this, individual coaching and group. And we share this, there's leadership as we know it has changed. Because given a lot of work we're doing about that post-pandemic culture. Yeah. If you looked at the definition of leadership 5 years ago, it's a good one. And that's the ability to guide, govern, and influence. And that's a good, it's not a bad one. What we're telling leaders, and this is hard for some leaders to get, man, is leadership today is the ability to listen, understand, and engage. Other words, leaders before had strong vocal stuff going on. Leaders today need to listen because you got to be able to understand what that person is saying to you. Where is it coming from? And so put down your iPad, put down your iPhone, and hear what folks are saying. Don't multitask. Listen to them. I'll say this in closing with this one part here. There was a coach years ago named John Wooden. He was the coach of the UCLA Bruins. I love that guy, man. Back in the 60s and 70s, he was the greatest coach at that time. And he won 7 NCAA championships in a row. And he won 10 overall, which was unheard of back then. And so they asked him the question, Coach Wooden, how did you succeed at such a high level? How did you pull the best out of these players like this? And he was such a humble man. He said, well, we use a process called customized motivation. In an interview looking at him, what's that? He said, we don't coach any two players the same way. We find out what the needs of those players are, and we coach to that. And he said, I train all my coaches to be sensitive to who some players do best when they get a hug. Some players do best when you show them the data. This is how we're going to get it done. Some players need to be pushed. Coach, feed me, give me more. And once you find out what that is, you're going to bring out the best of that player. And that's the same thing with leaders. So those are two things I see, man. Equipping people to do the job well, which some feel like they don't have it. And leaders understanding that leadership is not something, that's not a promotion. It is truly an art form that one must study. And in particular in our space where we're dealing with so many complex challenges.
That's great. I think that's a great next step for our audience as well. Listen, understand, and engage. And it takes leadership in providing direct services, whether you're working within an organization or leading a team of people, providing that service, listen, understand, and engage. Well,
yeah, man.
Darrell, Coach D, this has been awesome. And we could probably go on and on with each area of these
bring me back, man.
different
I'd love
topics.
To do it again.
We'll have to do this again at some point, and maybe outside of the conference or the next one. But I'm sure people out there are listening to you, maybe want to connect with you and learn more about some of the work that you're doing and how to maybe partner together.
Okay.
How could they find you?
Well, I have two websites. One is CoachDSpeaks.com. I jokingly tell people, don't mistake me for the political Coach D, because there's some young guy that kind of hijacked my brand and he's out there. But I'm CoachDSpeaks.com, and we're a professional development training and coaching firm. But we also created selfcareempowered.com, selfcareempowered.com, because we're really honing in on self-care as being a precursor to wellness. And that's a huge deal today in the workplace. And lastly, I'm very active on social media on LinkedIn. So connect with me as Darrell Coach D Andrews on LinkedIn. And every day we're putting out content on LinkedIn. And it's been fruitful, but it's also been enjoyable. And I learned a lot because I watch other people's content as well. And we do some things on Instagram and all that, but our big push is more on LinkedIn. So
that's great. Well, hey, thank you for your time, and
thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Hey, man, I've been 17 years straight. I'll be there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to KRA's The Hub. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about KRA Corporation, visit www.kra.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.